Welcome back to Court TV Live. We're turning our attention now to Denver, Colorado, and the sentencing hearing for ex-paramedic Jeremy Cooper. He's facing up to 3 years in prison after being convicted last December of criminally negligent homicide in the 2019 death of Elijah McClain. He was the 23-year-old who was put in a neck hold after police stopped him while he was walking home from the store. He was injected with ketamine by Cooper and died several days later. McClain was not armed nor accused of breaking any laws. Now, before we go into court to listen to those live proceedings, here's a look back at the moment that shocked the nation. The body camera footage of Elijah McClain's interaction with police, then paramedics. We must warn you, the content is graphic.
Hey, stop right there. Hey, stop right there. Stop. 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 I have a right to stop you because you're being suspicious.
Well, okay.
Turn around.
No,
Turn around.
Actually, you're hurt,
Turn around.
Stop.
Stop tensing up, dude. Stop tensing up, bro. Stop tensing up.
Let go of me.
Stop tensing up. Stop tensing up.
No, let go of me.
Stop tensing up.
No, I am an introvert. Please respect the boundaries that I am speaking.
Stop tensing up.
Stop.
Relax.
Stop. I'm going home.
Relax, or I'm going to have to change this situation. Stop.
Leave me alone.
Stop.
Can you please
No,
cooperate?
can you leave me alone?
No, we're gonna
First
talk
off,
to
you guys started to arrest me, and I was stopping my music to listen. Now let go of me.
So he's walking away from us, and he did this thing. We're like, hey, dude, this is not a big deal. Just relax. And we sat there for a good 30 seconds just trying to calm him down. We're like, dude, hey, not a big deal. We need to talk to you. And then he kept doing this, and he kept saying things that didn't make any sense. And then I'm like, hey, bring him over the grass. So if we do have to take him down, we can take him down the grass. Not because we're right here by the rocks. And then he starts going even crazier, so we get him cornered against the wall.
What's he doing when he's acting crazy?
He's like saying stuff, and he's holding his arms in, and he's like, I don't remember exactly what he was saying right now, but just acting really strange.
Randy, you needed relief, buddy? Randy, you needed relief? No, I'm good. I'm just going to pat him down. Make sure
And then over there, Brody tells me to try to grab my gun. So we pull him down.
While
So he pulls his arm free and comes out, and I don't remember feeling it because I was focused on him, but he said, you're trying to grab a gun, so I'm like, okay, so he comes down, and then, yeah, go from there.
I was just going home. I'm an introvert and I'm different.
he come out? He's out? Was he out?
I heard some snoring.
I just
But he
don't
wasn't completely.
He didn't lose consciousness? Yeah.
I'm just different.
He tried to grab my gun.
That's all. That's all I was doing.
It was actually Rosenblatt.
I'm so
He reached for
sorry.
your gun, dude.
I have no gun.
That's where I tried karate.
I don't do that stuff.
Don't do it, dude.
Relax, bro. Come
Chill
on.
out.
You already lost this one. Just relax.
This is not appropriate at all. No. When we tried to stop him, dude.
Come on.
Was this anything? Did he speak English or anything like that?
He speaks English. But he's definitely on something.
Okay.
At least once.
Ow. Okay.
Stop, dude.
Well, chill out. You've already been told several times to stop.
I can't sense myself. Ow.
Just put his arm down here, and I can drop my knee right in his tricep, and then he can't move. I'm sure he can breathe. Yeah. He can breathe. He can breathe. I just have his arm pinned behind his back. That's it.
Don't move your feet. Nope, don't do that.
So if you take his foot and angle it outwards and put pressure on his ankle. He almost did a push-up with all three of us on his back.
He's drawing on ketamine right now.
Okay.
You want to give that before we...
Yeah, so once he gets out, y'all going to hit him in the right shoulder?
You want some shears?
You want shoulder or
Either way, just...
right here, man?
Okay. We'll give that a couple of minutes. We'll see if that works. And then if it does,
Yeah.
we'll go to the bed.
Jeremy Cooper's sentencing is going to cap a series of trials that stretched over 7 months and resulted in the convictions of another paramedic and a police officer. 2 other officers who were there on the scene were acquitted. Let's get you into the courtroom now. The sentencing hearing is going on for Cooper.
The court will call up 21 CR 2800. That is people of the state of Colorado v. Jeremy Cooper. That comes before the court for sentencing. Entries of appearance will start with the prosecution.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. On behalf of the people, Assistant Attorney General Jason Slothauer, at council table with me are Shannon Stevenson, Krista Batchelder, and Aaron Grundy.
Good afternoon. And on behalf of Mr. Cooper.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Shauna Bagan, appearing with Mr. Cooper and Mike Pellet. And Mr. Goddard is also present.
All right, the court has had the opportunity to review numerous letters that were submitted to the court, the pre-sentence investigation report, and there was a sentencing memorandum that was filed some time ago. The court believes it's ready to proceed this afternoon. Are the parties ready to proceed?
People are ready, Your Honor.
Yeah.
All right. I guess I'll note, I actually, for whatever reason, I had time this morning to read through the electronic file, including the letters and the sentencing memorandums and such. And it became clear to me over the course of the litigation in this and some of the other cases that folks have some really strong opinions. And some of those opinions are that the prosecution in this case was ill-conceived, politically motivated, or may have negative long-term ramifications. I understand those positions, and there are many people that believe just the opposite. That being said, those are not the issues that I'm here to address this afternoon. The issues I must address have to do with the sentencing in this case. And I think we need to keep our conversations limited to that. So, on behalf of Mr. Cooper.
Yes, Your Honor. On behalf of Mr. Cooper, we have some speakers that we're going to call forward, and then Mr. Cooper will address the court and then counsel, Your Honor. If I may call Mr. Engineer Matt Wakefield.
Good afternoon. Just for my court reporter and for the other folks who are going to speak, I'll just ask that you state your first and last name, and then spell your last for my court reporter.
Yes, Your Honor. My name is Matthew Wakefield, M-A-T-T-H-E-W. Last name is W-A-K-E-F-I-E-L-D.
Thank you. I'd just like to tell you.
Your Honor, I've been asked to share with you today a few things that I know to be true about Jeremy Cooper. And I believe that there's a couple of reasons why I was asked to speak. Firstly, because I've been in a position over the last 8 years to observe Jeremy's behavior as a husband, his behavior as a father, as well as his behavior as a paramedic. And another reason why I believe I've been asked to speak to you today is because my perspective on this particular case might be different than most people who are in this room today. Because like the McClain family, I tragically and unexpectedly lost my 21-year-old son less than 3 years ago. So I know what it's like to get that phone call when the voice is telling you that your son's not coming home. That phone call that accelerates your heart rate, yet it stops time simultaneously. The very brief background is my son was on vacation, having lunch with his wife and his 1-year-old son. A gunman walked into the restaurant with the intent to take someone's life. As people either ran or dove under tables, the gunman took aim at my grandson. And in that moment, my son stood up, unarmed, and redirected the attention of the gunman towards himself.
We've reached the top of the hour. We do have to squeeze in a break, but our thanks to Michelle Thomas for her expertise and analysis this hour. Corey Pegues is going to stick around, and Michael Ayala joins us next for more of this sentencing hearing for Jeremy Cooper. Welcome back. back to Court TV Live. I'm Julia Janae in for Judge Ashley Wilcox.
And I'm Michael Ayala. We're both here today giving you your front row seat to justice. And we are in Colorado this afternoon for the sentencing hearing for ex-paramedic Jeremy Cooper.
He's facing up to 3 years in prison after being convicted last December of criminally negligent homicide in the 2019 death of Elijah McClain.
The 23-year-old was put in a neck hold after police stopped him while he was walking home. He was injected with ketamine by Cooper and died several days later. McClain was not armed nor accused of breaking any laws.
Let's get you back into court now. We are watching that sentencing hearing unfold. Someone on behalf of Cooper is giving an impact statement.
He was shot 5 times and did not survive his injuries. I'm only sharing this tragedy with you so that you'll understand that my heart truly breaks for the McClain family. I could never, out of respect for life, sit here before you and just tell you my personal opinion of Jeremy Cooper in a case of this magnitude. But I will, however, share with you some facts that I've observed. I have witnessed Jeremy Cooper to be a loyal husband and a loving father. In fact, most of the time when Jeremy and I have met outside of work, he's most often running late because he's running some of his children around from one event to the other. This has shown me that he has his priorities in life in order and that he plays an active role in bringing them up every day. But outside of that social connection, I've also worked with Jeremy Cooper at the same firehouse, and I've observed him at the end of a 24-hour shift on the fire department. Amid all of that exhaustion of running calls, I've witnessed Jeremy treat patients with the highest level of expertise and compassion, just as he did as if it were the first call and he was fresh to start the shift. There's one shift that might seem insignificant to most, but it stands out to me. It was late into the night when the station tones to respond came in for a medical assist. When we arrived on scene, I quickly noted that this patient's face was familiar. In fact, this was the 3rd time in less than 24 hours that this gentleman had called 911. Unfortunately, I found myself losing interest in what the patient was saying, but as I observed Jeremy interact with this man, who honestly had no medical needs, I saw a paramedic treat him with compassion, empathy, and kindness, just like he did the first time we encountered that same man roughly 12 hours earlier. I went home after that shift and I told my wife, if one of our family members ever needs assistance, I hope someone like Jeremy is the one who responds. In fact, on many occasions while speaking to new hires on the fire department, I've used Jeremy Cooper as an example of someone that they should strive to be like. His knowledge, his compassion, his commitment to serving the community have always made a big impression on me personally. Your Honor, I respect your authority in this court. So as you consider Jeremy's future and what it looks like, I'm humbly asking you to show leniency in this sentencing. As a father who has lost a son the same age as Elijah McClain, I would never ask for leniency if I felt like Jeremy Cooper was a threat to society. There are indeed evil people that we need your judgment and your protection from. But in my experience, Jeremy Cooper is not one of them. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my perspective today.
Thank you, sir.
Paramedic Stephanie Brown.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephanie Brown, S-T-E-P-H-A-N-I-E, last name Brown, B-R-O-W-N. Thank you for your time today, Your Honor. 12 years ago, I lost my best friend, my brother. I'd been a first responder for years, and from that incident, I harbored a lot of hatred towards first responders. I knew they were doing their job, but for me, it wasn't good enough. During that time, one responder pulled me aside. He didn't say anything, he just sat with me. This stoic act was the most compassionate act I had ever felt. I learned kindness and compassion comes in many different ways. I worked with Jeremy as a new firefighter. and a new paramedic during my training. I witnessed the same compassion from Jeremy. Jeremy was always very stoic, but he would sit and hold the hands of patients or family members, giving every ounce of kindness and compassion he had to offer. Jeremy was somebody I also said, if anything happens to me or my family, I want this man there. Today, I ask you to see Jeremy for the kind and compassionate person he is. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Eva Karkina.
Hello. Sorry. Hello. My name is Yevhenia Karkina, Y-E-V-H-E-N-I-Y-A. Karkina, K-A-R-K-I-N-A. Thank you, Honorable Court, for giving me an opportunity to say what I have experienced. My name is Yevhenia Karkina, and I'm a refugee from Ukraine. My husband, my daughter, we sought solace and safety in the United States after enduring 3 months of living in occupied territory when the war started in Ukraine just recently. We were subjected to bombing, shooting, and constant fear. Prior to our arrival in this great nation, I served as a Senior Officer Legal Assistant for United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, working closely with individuals who have experienced similar hardship. It was during the transition period that we had the fortunate opportunity to meet Jeremy and his family. Our children attended the same school, and it was Jeremy who took the initiative to approach us, extending a hand of friendship and understanding that we really needed. From the very beginning, Jeremy demonstrated genuine empathy and compassion, ensuring that we felt accepted and secured in our new and unfamiliar surroundings. His support, both emotional and physical, proved invaluable as we struggled to overcome the profound traumas of war, and you can still hear it in my voice. Jeremy is an exceptional individual. He possesses a kind and warm-hearted nature that extended to all those around him, regardless of race, nationality, or any other differences, which we observed through our joint communication and friendship with the people who surrounded us, of different nationalities, races, and colors. We have spent considerable time together attending school events, organizing play dates, and even visiting each other's homes. Throughout our interaction, Jeremy's wisdom and perspective on the world have been instrumental in helping me regain a sense of normalcy and purpose here again as a human being. It is important to note that Jeremy's acceptance of diversity and his innate ability to recognize the value in every human that I've been observing here have been a transformative impact on my life. As a direct result of his unwavering support and encouragement, I have successfully secured employment as a case manager with a resettlement agency. In this role, I have the privilege of assisting and supporting refugees from various backgrounds, races, nationalities, and colors. Jeremy's influence has empowered me to embrace these differences and contribute meaningfully to society that has provided us with a second chance in life. In conclusion, I wholeheartedly attest to Jeremy's exceptional character and unwavering commitment to the principles enshrined in the United States law. He is a remarkable individual whose actions have positively affected the lives of those around him, including myself and my family. I kindly request that you give due consideration to this testimonial as you deliberate on matters related to Jeremy's decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lieutenant Kathleen Hancock.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Kathleen Hancock. Kathleen, K-A-T-H-L-E-E-N. Last name Hancock, H-A-N-C-O-C-K. Before I begin today, sir, and thank you for letting me speak, I'd like to ask you, Your Honor, Ms. McClain, as well as yourself, if I can turn and address her before I speak on behalf of Jeremy.
I prefer that you just address the court.
Okay. And if I can address you, sir, and if I was allowed to turn to her. Today, I would not be able to start this conversation if I was not able to look at her and tell her there are no amount of words coming from me as a black face that is sorry, that anything that could happen that would ever soothe her heart. but I do wish that she has every support in every day of her life that she wakes up. This has been a hard case for a person of me that works for this department and for many of us. I speak on behalf of Jeremy. I am a lateral that came from another department. Quite a few years of experience. Jeremy was the person I was sent to on my second stint for him to prepare me as I failed my first one, getting through the protocols. Jeremy and I were on a call for a respiratory arrest. Stoic individual that everybody has seen, that I also seen, would sit across from. I could never figure out, but I would always try to figure out if he was genuine or not. Was he on his best care? Did he really want me to pass? During this respiratory call, he had to step in because I almost gave the wrong medication. I knew I messed up. I know that I carry very hard when it comes to patients. This department knows I don't have any shame in having difficult conversations. As a firefighter, we are taught, get comfortable being uncomfortable. That was a very uncomfortable situation because I knew my job was on the line and also put another life at risk. As we went back to the station, as we all know that a paramedic's trying to come to this department, as well as it being a lateral when you're taught from some other department, you question some of the things you're being taught. Jeremy, as we got back to the station, took me aside, sits me down. There's not much that he probably could have said to me as my mind's spinning that this is it. He looks at me and he says, as he said to many of us, "How do you think that call went, Kathleen?" It went terrible. He continued on with his stoic-looking face, but I could see him getting red, and I could see the care in his eyes. I speak today on behalf of being a paramedic and as well as being an officer. As I said, working with Jeremy, I would put my life in his hands. His stoicness is a lot of how we have to be sometimes. It's stepping away from that situation that you really have to evaluate. And as I said, as he sat there and looks at me, "How do you think that call went, Kathleen?" There's no doubt in my mind that every day he wakes up, every day he goes to bed, every second, every minute, and hour, every hour, as well as Mrs. McClain, sitting there wondering, what could I have done better? What could I have done differently, Jeremy? How could this have went? I ask today on behalf of myself and him that you hear my words. I appreciate you letting me stand in front of you and speak. And again, this has been a hard case to see you go through. And I do wish both parties that God walks with both of them.
Thank you.
Retired Battalion Chief Diane Schroeder.
Your Honor, Diane Schroeder, DIANESCHROEDER. Thank you for letting me speak today. I've known Jeremy for over 20 years. What started as a professional relationship has grown into a lifetime friendship. I had the privilege of being Jeremy's lieutenant during my almost 19-year career with Aurora Fire Rescue. After leaving AFR at the rank of captain, I went to Louisville Fire Protection District, where I served as a battalion chief and EMS chief until I retired a year ago. Trust is the most important currency first responders have with the community. Along with trust within the community, trust is one of the pillars of a firefighter's relationship with each other, leaders within the organization, and public safety partners. The night Elijah was killed, trust was broken. A young man's life was lost, and the trajectory of all who were involved has been forever changed. I am so sorry for the loss of Elijah. And I know it is possible to hold the tension between two truths. The loss of Elijah will always haunt me, and the heart and character of Jeremy Cooper are not what has been portrayed.
We do have to squeeze in a break. We'll hit the pause button on that sentencing hearing, but there are two sides inside of that courtroom.
Absolutely, and I was just going to say that's what highlights the difficulty of this case. You got these paramedics and that culture, which is generally one of wanting to help the public, but then you had a very difficult situation that resulted in death.
And up to 3-year sentence on the table. When we come back, we'll have more of that sentencing hearing. Don't go anywhere.
Tonight, on Closing Arguments, the high-stakes death penalty trial of Chad Daybell. We'll take you inside the courtroom as we unpack today's key moments. Plus, the controversial case against Karen Reed, the Massachusetts woman who claims she's being framed for the murder of her police officer boyfriend. We're breaking down everything you need to know ahead of Monday's opening statements.
Closing Arguments with Vinny Politan, tonight at 8, 7 Central, only on CourtTV.com.
Welcome back. We are watching the third and final sentencing hearing related to the 2019 death of Elijah McClain this afternoon.
The former paramedic who was on trial and convicted, Jeremy Cooper, was on trial last year, and the conviction was for a charge of criminally negligent homicide. This is after both Cooper and 2 other officers stopped McClain while he was walking home one night.
Now, a struggle ensued soon after, and McClain was forcibly placed in a carotid hold, that's a chokehold, and then injected with ketamine when paramedics arrived. And McClain later died from his injuries.
Let's go back into court now. We are hearing that sentencing hearing, and we're listening to impact statements on behalf of Jeremy Cooper. His friend Deborah Schroeder is giving that statement.
Challenging high-rise drill. I was impressed by his humility while I encouraged him to climb the stairs. Our paths wouldn't cross again until he bid to work with me in 2006. I had the privilege of being his lieutenant on Engine 2. While many people in the fire service strive for the next promotion, Jeremy loved being a paramedic, a firefighter, and a field instructor. And he also was passionate about working on the north side of Aurora. Jeremy's quiet and confident energy is contagious. He would tell the new paramedics that it was their job to remain calm and be the professionals on the scene. This sage advice benefited us on many occasions, but a couple in particular will always stand out. The first was a medical call we responded to that was reported as a fall. We arrived at the scene, but something didn't feel right as we walked inside the house. We were directed downstairs to the patient, and as the husband was walking up the stairs, I noticed a handgun in the waistband of his pants. Without using words, I sent Jeremy and another crew member to follow the husband while I got on the radio to get law enforcement on scene. While the new paramedic and I treated the patient, Jeremy and the engineer diffused a potentially catastrophic situation. Another incident involved a traumatic injury to a young woman. Jeremy instructed the ambulance driver on which hospital to take us to. At some point during the transport, Jeremy realized the driver was taking us to another hospital farther away. Once again, he remained calm, provided patient care, and spoke with the ambulance driver after the incident, offering grace and accountability through a teachable moment. After a few years on Engine 2, I was reassigned to headquarters and eventually promoted to captain. Over time, when I worked at a slower station, I tried to get Jeremy to come back and work with me, but he didn't want to leave Engine 2. Working on Engine 2 with Jeremy was one of the highlights of my career and a bond that has lasted over 2 decades. The fire service is a reactionary profession. The community calls 911 when they've exceeded their ability to handle problems. The firefighters respond after or during the emergency and are tasked with solving problems while only having a snapshot of the information. Trusting the sources of information, including our law enforcement partners, family members, and bystanders, play a critical role in the initial decision-making process for actions taken. Based on the information provided, firefighters make the best and most appropriate decisions during chaotic scenes. Excluding critical information can impact patient treatment, breaking trust, and revealing a fragile and imperfect system. The fire service is also a paramilitary organization. We're expected to follow the orders and directions of leaders, trusting that decisions reflect the best interests of the community and the organization's members. Unfortunately, the executive leaders of Aurora Fire in 2018 took actions that set the organization up for failure and negatively impacted emergency medical care delivery to the community. The former fire chief dismantled the Emergency Medical Service Bureau without regard for best practices for fire rescue agencies. The leadership for Aurora Fire at the time stopped providing meaningful support to paramedics, including quality control. Training was subpar, accountability was inconsistent, and responsibilities were pushed down to the street level without much direction. It was heartbreaking to see the organization that at one time was a pioneer in emergency medical care deteriorate so quickly by the former fire chief. These organizational shifts prompted me to make tough choices. After 16 years, I dropped my paramedic certification and eventually left at the end of 2018 to work for another organization. Ultimately, I chose to leave AFR because I had lost trust in their leadership. Jeremy is one of my dearest friends. When my son was born, he was one of the few who came to the hospital. When my personal life crumbled, he supported me through refuge, safety, and discretion. When he met Tara and got married and became a dad, I watched his heart grow even bigger. His dedication, loyalty, professionalism, and calm demeanor are his superpowers. I trust Jeremy with my life, with my family's life. I trust him to make best decisions at the moment with the information he has, and I know that Elijah's death will always haunt him. The boots on the ground have little impact on fixing the systemic public safety issues. That responsibility falls to the leadership of police and fire departments. I know that Aurora Fire is proactively striving to make organizational changes to rebuild and repair the trust lost and fix the fragile system in which public safety entities work. Everyone in this courtroom has been impacted by Elijah's tragic death and the events that unfolded that night. Judge Warner, I ask the court to consider keeping Jeremy in the community when you're considering his sentence with his family and allow him to rebuild that fragile trust. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tara Cooper.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Tara Cooper, Tarrahcooper. I'm married to Jeremy and mother to his children. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today, and I would like to start by offering my heartfelt condolences to the McClain family. Mother to mother, I cannot imagine the pain that she must feel. The loss of a child is not one that I would ever want to experience personally or wish on anybody. Healthcare providers take these losses very personally, and while I realize it doesn't bring her child back, I want her to know that my heart aches for her. I pray for her inner peace and know that she will be reunited with Elijah again someday. As I turn to you, Your Honor, I would like to thank you again for the opportunity to introduce you to my family and to provide a little context and information about us. Please excuse me as I've been a little under the weather this week, in addition to being very emotional. I will do my best to get it through it all clearly. I've revised this statement so many times as I desperately want you to really understand exactly who Jeremy is. Jeremy and I met in the spring of 2014. Jeremy had come out of a long-term marriage that just didn't work out, and I had come from a long line of bad first dates. As fate would have it, we both ended up on the same dating app. As we were beginning to get to know each other, I was concerned that we wouldn't be a match. He was quiet, calm, and reserved. All the things I'm not. But we defied the odds, and our relationship took off. Jeremy is exactly like what my late dad was. He's a rule follower, a Consumer Reports researcher, a history nerd, and a lover of vintage cars. He's kind, compassionate, and gentle. I really wish everybody here would know and understand why that's so important. He literally does not have a mean bone in his body, and we don't fight, ever. He's incredibly patient, humble, and understanding in all circumstances, and his ability to maintain calmness in the most frustrating situations is unparalleled. This makes him a natural-born caregiver. We were married in the fall of 2015, and then we welcomed our first beautiful daughter in February of 2016. Your Honor, I have sat by silently for literally years, and most recently the intense 4-week trial, where I listened to my amazing and faithful husband's name get dragged through the proverbial mud. I listened as it was suggested that Jeremy were inhumane, unkind, and a horrible human with a complete lack of compassion. And it was incredibly difficult to hold back the screams inside of me to be able to help you and everybody else in the courtroom stop and see the man that I know, the man that I love, who is none of those things. This incredible man that you're here to impose a sentence upon today. As I watched the incredibly painful videos played again and again, my heart broke because I knew exactly what Jeremy was thinking, because I actually know him. He wanted to get his patient out of that situation. He was anxious because he knew time was of the essence and he wanted to help Elijah. A man with Jeremy's level of integrity and commitment to his work is only focused on the task at hand. In fact, I have been told by many of his past paramedic trainees that Jeremy's line was always, "I don't care what time it is, I don't care what they look like or how tired you are, what they smell like, what they act like. These are human beings and they deserve to be treated with respect. You will call them sir or ma'am, and if you don't treat them with that level of respect, then it will be in my report." This is Jeremy. This is who he is to his core. During the time that we were dating, I asked him why he continued to work at the busiest station that served the city of Aurora. He had the seniority to move to a slower house, a house that was not literally up all night running call after call. But his response to me was that his job satisfaction and his commitment to the community lied in that he could help these underserved populations where people had trouble helping themselves. He wanted to be able to help them. He went on to say that he had intended to do that for so long as his body would allow him to do it. Judge, what many people don't know and haven't heard about this man that I know and love is that on the night of this incredible tragedy, Jeremy and I had a 3-year-old, a 1-year-old, and I was 7 months pregnant with our 3rd child. This was a life we had built together, and her dreams were becoming reality as we were about to welcome our 3rd miracle to the world. Jeremy would work full-time, come home, kiss me, and briefly tell me on how many calls he ran on that shift, and then tag in as the full-time parent as I would head out the door as a full-time nurse anesthetist. We were both so incredibly devoted to our jobs. We loved serving others and deeply loved our growing family. Despite our crazy schedules and our young family, Jeremy is the one who suggested that my aging mother come to live with us full-time after the death of my father in 2018. My mother had lost all of her income and needed solutions, and Jeremy was the one that provided that solution, not me. So here we were. We had 2 young children, a 3rd one on the way, full-time jobs in public service.
All right, still with us, retired NYPD executive and author of Once a Cop, Corey Pegues. And Corey, it's clear, and I'm willing to accept, based on all that we're hearing, that Jeremy Cooper, the defendant in this case, was a very good guy and had all good intentions. That's fair. We can talk a little bit later about what he has done, but I want to go back, since you were once a cop, and on the streets, I want to go back to the initial stop that started this whole thing. Only one of the 3 cops involved were actually convicted of a crime. But when we talked about this, and you've been on my show before, we've talked about this stop, it just seemed as though this whole thing could have been avoided. We know that there was some social anxiety in Elijah McClain. He had some issues. When people got close, a little bit of anxiety in those situations. Yet and still, it just felt like this situation was escalated by police. He wasn't following their orders exactly the way he wanted to. Explain to me why that's such a difficult situation to put police officers in.
Yeah, good afternoon. It's very difficult, and you always have to have somebody on the scene that can escalate, not de-escalate. So what happens is, I tell these cops all the time, whenever you're stopping somebody, you should always be like, "Hello, sir, ma'am, we received a call. Somebody said you was doing," so, you know, like, kind of try to explain to the people. But when you come in on the scene and you starting off aggressively, "Hey, stop, you look suspicious," you know, like, people have a right to walk down the block, believe it or not in America. And just because he was suspicious, what was the suspicious behavior? What is the suspicious behavior? But one cop on this scene has to be in control, saying, "Hey, guys, like, calm down. All right, let's pat him down. Does he have any weapons?" He has no weapons on him in the form of a gun. That's what they're probably going to be looking for. Anyway, let him go. That's it. This is easy. This is stuff that cops engage in every single day. Millions and millions of stops happen a day where they're stopping somebody, question, and/or frisk. This poor kid shouldn't have died. And like you said earlier on the teaser, Mike, the actions of the EMS, what his wife is saying, what a great guy that says, I don't see that at the scene. He's not telling the cops, like, hey, guys, like, back up, let me evaluate him, sir. You know, the actions are not meeting up with the words that the people are saying. And the judge sees that, too.
Yeah, I would agree. And Julia, quickly, before we go to break, you know, the arrival of the paramedics on the scene is difficult to judge because they're almost at the behest of the officers. They're establishing the tenor of the situation.
I think it's surprising to people that the paramedics are the ones who are getting the brunt of the sentences in this case. I do want to ask our criminal defense attorney, Jeffrey Wolf, is with us as well. Jeff, your thoughts on where the judge might go with this when we have up to 3 years in this case?
Well, you know, this is all happening in my backyard. I'm here in Colorado, and I was at that protest that you were just showing pictures of. Elijah McClain is somebody who died in my hometown. I'm from Aurora, and so I say his name, and I say it proudly, and he died for no reason. And the prior EMS worker got 1.5 years. And it was a shocking sentence to those in that community, in that EMS community. And I think this one will get the very similar sentence because Judge Warner is known for giving similarly situated people similar sentences. So I think we're headed towards a very similar sentence here. And the reason that the cops didn't get convicted and these EMS officers did is because the autopsy determined that the ketamine was the cause of death. And so the officers were able to point the fingers at the EMS workers as the people who actually caused the death. But anybody who knows anything about this case knows that the chokehold, that chokehold caused this death because it exacerbated the ketamine effect on Elijah McClain. And here in Colorado, we had to pass a law saying that EMS workers were not allowed to give ketamine to suspects, and that EMS officers no longer had to follow the direction of police officers, because that's what happened in this case, is that police officers were telling these paramedics what to do with their patient. And I agree with the other guest here that it's not what you see here. They're not taking care of their patient. They're following the directions of the police officers. That's not what medical personnel are supposed to do. If you care about your patient, you do what's best for the patient. You don't follow the directions of a cop.
Fair enough. And you know, we do have to take a break, but I just want to say part of the reason also I think that Elijah McClain didn't have a good outcome is because he did have some social anxiety issues, and I think that resulted in some difficulty communicating, which then I think escalated things to the point where everyone didn't quite understand what was going on. So it's a really complicated situation that I want to continue to discuss, but right now we do have to take a break. When we do come back, we can go back to the sentencing hearing of Jeremy Cooper and the death of Elijah McClain. Keep it here on Court TV.
Back to Court TV Live. Back now to Colorado, where we are watching the sentencing hearing for former paramedic Jeremy Cooper.
The former paramedic faces up to 3 years in prison for the 2019 death of Elijah McClain.
Let's get back in now. We're hearing from friends and family in support of Jeremy Cooper.
Emotional and financial support. And Jeremy wholeheartedly accepted that responsibility without question. This amazing man that I get to call my husband walked alongside of me when we had to go through 3 rounds of in vitro fertilization to accomplish my dream of a family. 3 precious babies. Jeremy never even thought he would be a dad, and now he doesn't know who he is without them. They're so dependent on their dad, and I wish you could see him with them. He makes them laugh. He plays a hide and seek in the house and plays dinos ad nauseum with our son, and then he cuddles them at bedtime. He is a daily and integral part of their daily lives, and they're so proud of their daddy. They always ask when a fire truck passes if that's his truck, or they'll say, "Daddy, you're a firefighter, right?" When the Marshall fires happened, our oldest daughter was deeply concerned about what was happening to the people in that area. And at bedtime, after stories and prayers were done, she asked if he was going to go help fight the fire and help those people. And the pain that I saw cross Jeremy's face was something I will never forget. Part of Jeremy's soul died when he was told he didn't have a job as a firefighter anymore. And we haven't had the ability or heart to tell our children that he will never be that again. This man that I know and love entertained my desire to build camping memories with our children. as this was a fond childhood memory of mine. He went along with the purchase of a fifth-wheel camper and began learning everything he needed to make beautiful childhood memories for our children. He didn't balk at the idea, he didn't argue, he just came through and made our dreams come true. Jeremy has the most tender, gentle, and loving character. He still opens the door for me every time. He assists my mother with anything that she needs. He assists her with her mobility limitations, driving her where she may need help being driven, attending doctor's appointments, rearranges her furniture as she desires. He is the one that calls her to dinner, and he is the one that concerns himself with how she is feeling and whether or not she's checked her blood sugar today. He's the one that notices that there are deer in the neighborhood and knows that it will be dusk soon. Mom will be headed home around that time, so he calls her to tell her to be on the lookout. The man that I know, and I pray that you are able to understand as he sits before you in judgment today, insists on carrying the luggage for everybody on trips. He gets up late with our children when they're sick, and he'll clean up whatever mess was made, often telling me to stay in bed and rest. Most recently, he got up with our puppy 6 times during the night when the puppy had a stomach bug. He cleans, cooks, grills. He's tender with everybody in his life. He's not perfect, though. I still am waiting for my dining room curtains to be hung. But he's my perfect. He's the perfect daddy to our babies, and they simply adore him. This man that I hope you're finally able to see today spent more than 25 years selflessly serving others. He was awarded many honors within the fire department, including countless Phoenix Awards. These are awards that are given when saving someone who has CORD, and a patient then recovers and is discharged with no deficit. I saw him receive awards for sponsoring children at Christmas time that didn't have the means to receive gifts. And he would often take stuffed animals from our own children's stuffed animal pile because he wanted to have something to give the pediatric patients that he would tend to on calls. Our home is adorned with memorabilia from his career in fire service. Old retired fire helmets sit on our shelf. There are framed photos of vintage fire trucks on the wall. One year he told me about call boxes that were used in the early century in New York City and how cool they were. I was able to locate one on eBay and give it to him for Christmas that year. It sits on our bookshelf in our living room. Our son has many outfits that are decorated with fire trucks because that's what his daddy is. Well, was. This is a man that was proud to do the work that he did, and it showed in so many ways.
We do have to hit the pause button. We'll go back into that sentencing hearing on the other side of this quick break. Stay with us.
Tonight, on Closing Arguments, the high-stakes death penalty trial of Chad Daybell. We'll take you inside the courtroom as we unpack today's key moments. Plus, the controversial case against Karen Reed, the Massachusetts woman who claims she's being framed for the murder of her police officer boyfriend. We're breaking down everything you need to know ahead of Monday's opening statements.
Closing Arguments with Vinny Politan, tonight at 8, 7 Central, only on Court TV.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. Michael Ayala here with Julia Janae in for Judge Ashley Wilcott. And we're in Colorado this afternoon where the sentencing hearing for one of the paramedics convicted in the 2019 killing of Elijah McClain is underway.
Elijah McClain died after being roughly restrained and injected with the sedative ketamine.
Jeremy Cooper was found guilty of criminally negligent homicide last year and faces up to 3 years in prison.
So let's go back in now for more of that sentencing hearing. We're listening to Cooper's wife give an impact statement on behalf of her husband.
Ahmed, this dedicated professional man, placed himself in the very dangerous position of going into the most vulnerable places, such as nursing homes and ICE facilities, to tend to the sickest patients with COVID. This was during a time when we didn't understand how to keep people from dying of this disease. He would often have to manage airways and intubate these incredibly sick individuals with nothing more than a rain poncho and a simple mask, and he did it willingly, graciously, and without concern for himself, because that's the man and caregiver that he is. On the tragic night of Elijah McClain's death, knowing Jeremy and knowing his heart and his integrity, I know he was using his calm, even-keeled demeanor to try to help save Elijah. There just was so much, though, that he didn't have control over. Jeremy often uses the duck on the water analogy, the one where you have to look smooth on top, but like underneath you're paddling like crazy. I saw this in him in those very difficult to watch videos. He was trying to be the duck. The loss of life was a tragedy. There's just no disputing that. And Jeremy will carry the loss of Elijah with him forever, just as he does all the patients he was not able to save. Jeremy has relived that 8 minutes many times a day for the last nearly 5 years. How did this outcome come to be? How did medicine and training fail? When Jeremy came home from work the morning after the incident, he was upset, unnerved. I will say that Jeremy has a habit of not sharing tough calls with me. He thinks he's protecting me in some way from the cruel world. But this was different. He was not the same about this call in particular. He said that there was an unexpected core, and he went on to tell me the story. And I said, wow, that's awful. Do you think he had some medical condition that was unknown? And he just kept saying, I don't know, I just don't know. And he was upset. This is something that many people that don't work in healthcare just don't understand. We don't just move on. The loss of a patient has a profound impact each and every time. And I have a common and unique understanding of this as I also work in healthcare. Ironically, I'm a nurse anesthetist. The public deserves people working in healthcare that are willing to forsake themselves and their safety for the wellness and care of strangers, such as Jeremy did on nearly every shift he worked during his 25-plus year career, and as I continue to do today, for the lives of strangers, because we have a natural love of people making us clear caregivers willingly and happily. In medicine, we're always looking for ways to improve outcomes. Often this involves processes after a sentinel event such as this one. This analysis will look for errors in the process. However, it's important to consider that the processes in place at the time of the event are not always correct. Sometimes these outcomes are tragic, but those outcomes guide our future practice. Medicine is called the art or practice of medicine because we are always learning. We are always looking at outcomes and trying to find better ways. If we didn't study the ways that some things work and others don't, we would likely still be doing lobotomies for depression. But that didn't work, so we found other treatments. Those cases went on to become case studies to guide us in a better direction. Judge, Jeremy and I are just regular citizens, trying our best to make the right decisions. We've tried to make the right decisions surrounding our careers, our marriage, and starting a family. We waited until we were older, more established in our finances, careers, and morality before taking on the challenge of parenthood. And I beg you, Judge Warner, please look at the materials you have access to. I beg you to read the character letters that have been written on Jeremy's behalf.
All right, I want to bring back in our guest, still with us, retired NYPD Executive Corey Pegues and criminal defense attorney Jeffrey Wolf. Jeffrey, I want to go back to you because we're hearing a lot of good things about Jeremy Cooper, and I can say my sister was a paramedic. I know the culture. These are really salt-of-the-earth people who really just want to help. I mean, they're really good people as a general rule. And normally, paramedics, it had been very rare for them to face charges under these types of circumstances. But we know, according to the evidence, mistakes were made. Protocols weren't followed. Do you think it was right that they're facing charges in this case?
I do. I think everybody in this circumstance has consequences that have to come from this. I feel for the Cooper family that there are consequences that have to come from the mistakes that were made, but I feel for the McClain family that they lost Elijah. Elijah McClain passed away because of the mistakes that were made by the paramedics in this case. The real tragedy here is that when this case was severed from the police officers' cases, the police officers were able to point the fingers at the paramedics, and 2 of the 3 of them walked away scot-free. And it left the paramedics holding the bag. And they are now the convicted felons that come out of this case, and they are going to go to prison. And the thing that I think is lost in all of this is that they were convicted of a very low charge. One of them got a 1.5 years. I suspect Cooper's going to get the same. In Colorado, that means they're likely going to spend a few months in prison because that's just the way it works. They're going to be computed out and paroled probably within 3 to 6 months. And so I'm sorry for this woman, and I feel her waterworks, but Elijah McClain's mom is going to deal with this pain for the rest of her life, and Elijah is gone. And so, no, I don't feel bad for them. This was a grave mistake made because they listened to the cops instead of their training.
No, we certainly will be hearing from the victims in this case. We'll be hearing those victim impact statements on the other side after we hear from the defense. Corey Pegues and Jeffrey Wolf, thank you so much for joining us today, sharing your expertise. We have a lot more ahead.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Coming up, more from Jeremy Cooper's sentencing hearing. We'll be right back with that. So keep it here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Michael Ayala. Ahead this hour, the second paramedic convicted in the death of Elijah McClain learns how much time he will spend behind bars. Also, a professor takes a plea deal in the murder of her husband just as her trial is set to get underway. And family friends take the stand as testimony continues in the murder trial of doomsday prophet Chad Daybell. And here are the biggest moments in today's Daily Wrap.
Chad and I were neighbors. Jason William, a neighbor, contacted me and said that Tammy had passed away. Basically, I went up to approach him, gave him a hug, and said, "I am so sorry for your loss." Yeah, he says, I asked him, he says, "Are they going to do an autopsy to find out?" Because, it might be for heredity's sake. Children might want to know how their mother passed away. So basically the words were, "No, I do not want her to have an autopsy." He wanted to have the funeral service as soon as possible. When I was there, of course, when I gave him the hug, he was teary, and he just lost his wife. But it just seemed like there was a business-like atmosphere about it. In fact, I believe the direct words to me were, "I don't want to drag this out. I don't want to drag this whole process out." This was a sudden death. I understand that she was sick, but somebody that young is usually physically enough to overcome it. Whenever there's somebody who's passed away without the doctors being there to handle that, I'm always really leery of things such as, well, I don't want to have an autopsy. I don't want to drag this thing out.
So in fairness, you found nothing that you thought would be suspicious?
I found nothing there that would be suspicious, that would lead to my suspicions, but because of the red flags, something wasn't sitting well with me.
If there ever is an instant where you were to find some problem with a body, whether it was something suspicious or something of a concern, are you under a legal obligation to report that to law enforcement as part of your licensing?
Typically not, because it should have been overlooked already by either the medical examiner, the coroner, or the doctor who was the attending physician.
And you took the time to look at the face of Tammy, is that right?
Correct.
You looked at the neck?
Yes.
You didn't see any issues of any kind of trauma or anything that would cause anything of a concern, is that right?
From my limited medical knowledge, no.
But if there was a concern, there was no visible concern of any kind of a problem, is that right?
That's correct.
What happened on October 9th of 2019?
Whitney and I received a call, and our bishop had informed us that Tammy had died.
What conversation did you have with Chad the day of Tammy's funeral in Idaho, or service in Idaho?
More specifically, we visited, but he said that he wasn't going to be living at the house at the time. He didn't feel comfortable being there and was going to stay in Rexburg with a friend.
Did he say anything about leaving Idaho?
Yes.
What did he tell you about that?
He said that he was going to go to Hawaii to do a biography, help a friend do a biography. I asked Chad the questions that probably everybody else would want to ask about where are the kids and why haven't you told anybody?
And what did Chad tell you about his wife Lori's children and where they were?
He looked me straight in the eye, and he told me that they were okay, and when this all was going to be, when everything came out, that everything was going to be just fine.
Another big day for prosecutors, and we'll have more coverage of the Doomsday Prophet murder trial a little later on in the show. But first, A sentencing hearing is underway in Colorado for the second paramedic convicted in the death of Elijah McClain. Now, McClain was stopped by Aurora police the night of August 30th, 2019, after a report of someone appearing suspicious on the street. Well, police put McClain in a headlock and a neck hold while paramedics injected him with a high dose of the powerful sedative ketamine. Well, the sentencing hearing of paramedic Jeremy Cooper is still underway. Let's get you back into court now for the continued support statements. These are statements in support of Jeremy Cooper.
By taking my sweet baby's daddy away from them. Please don't take my husband from me. Jeremy and I and our family will and have always followed your orders. Please don't take a perfectly fit, law-abiding, humble public servant out of his home where he is able to provide a wonderful example to his young, impressionable children. Please don't do that to them. This tragedy has completely shattered our world and our family. But given the chance to help heal, affect change, and move forward while always remembering Elijah, we would wholeheartedly embrace that challenge. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Retired Deputy Chief Anthony Cito.
Anthony Cito, A-N-T-H-O-N-Y, Cito, C-I-T-O. Good afternoon, Your Honor. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here speaking on behalf of Jeremy Cooper. A lot of what's already been said, I have in my notes, and what I can say is this, is that every single thing that people have said in this courtroom today about Jeremy is absolutely the truth. He is one of the finest gentlemen, paramedics I've ever met, but I like to add to this just a little bit. Jeremy has always been, he came into my battalion as a probationary firefighter, and the guys took a liking to him right away. To be accepted by your peers so rapidly, you've got to be a step above, and that was Jeremy. Jeremy became a very valued employee and firefighter and paramedic within the Aurora Fire Department. So much so that the fire department had enough confidence in him, they made him a field instructor where he evaluated new paramedics as they came out of paramedic school. He worked with them on the scene, he mentored them. He did so well that even the community college took a liking to him. They saw his quality of work that he did, his honesty, and they gave him a job as teaching paramedics. Now, Jeremy's teaching people to do this job. To do that, you've got to be pretty good. He was also a hazmat technician and a phenomenal firefighter. And I had the opportunity, because I was the battalion chief, and some days I would respond to calls with as few as 4 firefighters, and some days 80 or 90. And I had the opportunity to see the wide gamut of firefighters that responded with the Aurora Fire Department. And I had the opportunity to see that Jeremy was a cut above the rest. And about 20 years ago, I gave him a nickname. I called him Coupe de Ville. And Coupe de Ville was because Jeremy is truly the Cadillac amongst firefighters, Cadillac amongst paramedics. He was the best. And as everybody said, there's no doubt about it, Jeremy is the best. Jeremy worked on the busiest engine company in the city of Aurora. Industry-wide, Engine 2 is in the top percentage of busy engine companies in the nation. He could have opted out, he could have worked someplace else, but he didn't want to. That's what he called home, and he thrived on that. He worked in an area that was high gang, high violence, drugs, alcohol. The crime was rampant. He dealt with everything, not just once a day, but several times a day. Now, when you work in an environment like that, and I think it's important to know the culture that Jeremy had to work in day after day after day, and maybe this can explain a little bit of what happened that evening. On the scene, you've got 3 entities. You've got the police. The police have their threat or their victim or whatever they call them, their perp, and then you have the fire department. When the fire department's there, you've got 3 entities. You've got the fire department, you've got a patient, and then you have the police. Now, in a violent scene or where there's an uncontrollable patient or victim or whatever, the police call them, there's only going to be one alpha, and there's only going to be one dominant group, and that group is going to be the police department. And you are not going to be able to do your job 100% until the police department had established their dominance. Now, I wasn't at the scene that night, but I did watch the video, and I spent 2 decades working the Colfax corridor. And this happened time and time and time again, to a point where I'd had several meetings with lieutenants, sergeants, and shift commanders over these very issues. When the fire's on scene and we've got a patient and the cop has to neutralize the threat, we need to get hands on these patients immediately. As that night, I saw it in what Tara said, Jeremy standing there. There's not really a whole lot you can do. You can have some verbal communications, but there's no way you're going to get in there and you're going to touch that patient until that patient is relinquished to you from the alpha party on the scene, that being the police. Well, that night, from what I see, Elijah was contacted by a police officer. A set of steps went into motion. Some events led up to the point where Elijah was fighting for his life, handcuffed on the ground, and it required he being sedated. And that's where this came. Jeremy had, and we can what if this thing to death, but had Jeremy gotten Elijah 5 minutes sooner, we may not be here today. Jeremy is quality, and he does everything he can. And to blame him or to convict him of criminally negligent homicide because he's working within a broken system with a culture that can't be penetrated, and it's not getting any better. The culture's getting worse, and we see it every day on the news. My heart goes out to the McClain family, and from everything I've heard from people on the fire department, even officers I've talked to, Elijah was a good person. He was a good soul, and I'm sorry to see that. And I wish that Jeremy could have gotten his hands on him a little bit sooner. Didn't work out that way. We're working in a broken system with a culture that doesn't allow that. As far as Jeremy goes, he is unselfish. The word stoic has been used so many times today. It's true. He's courageous and he's smart. I was proud to have him working for me. I saw Jeremy save lives countless times, put himself in harm's way to save somebody's life. I remember one night on Colfax Avenue, we had a car that was up against the median, upside down. We had a fuel spill. The car was in a very precarious position. And before we could get the car stabilized and the fuel spill washed out, Jeremy was inside treating the patient, doing patient care. Put his life behind so this other person possibly could be saved. I've witnessed him drug and alcohol overdoses at some of those East Colfax motels, and everybody in this courtroom knows what I'm talking about. And Jeremy would go in there, and these people, they would be lying in their vomit, their feces, there would be bed bugs, there would be roaches. Jeremy didn't hesitate. Jeremy put himself first. He would be the first one in the door, and he would treat these people, every one of them, with the respect due. Another patient I saw one time was a full-blown HIV case, and this guy had been using intravenous drugs, and he got HIV, and he was in really bad shape. Jeremy treated this guy like it was a relative. He got down, talked on his level, and did everything he could to treat this man. He's unbelievable. He went into structure fires that he would go in to search for people and come out, and the reflective material on his bunker coat was melted because of the heat. But he didn't care. That wasn't what he was worried about. What he was worried about, if there was somebody in there, he was going to get him out. He always put himself in an unsafe position to save the life of somebody else. The last call I ran with Jeremy, this is really an emotional one. We had a 3-story apartment building, 12 units, 6 units fully involved in fire. We had already had, as we walked into the courtyard, we witnessed an elderly woman and her adult son being forced off a 3rd-floor balcony because of the fire. She died on impact. He was severely injured. As I did my 360, I looked around and we had people with compound fractures that have jumped out the windows of these buildings. I saw at one point a young father dropping a child to a police officer while the fire was rolling out over the back of his head on the 3rd floor. And I'm thinking to myself, this isn't going to be good. We are going to have a lot of fatalities. I turned around, I saw Jeremy. When I see Jeremy on scene, I get a calming effect because I know his skills, his drive, his compassion. I know what he's going to do. And I'll tell you what, he was going to die before somebody else died in that fire that night. He and Lieutenant Kaler and Vinnie Maroney, the 3 of them within seconds went into action. They stopped that fire to a point where another 6 or 8 people got out with their lives. This is what he does. And those people are alive today because of his actions. There's people that are going to eat dinner with their families tonight because of Jeremy's efforts. There's kids sitting in elementary schools today because of Jeremy's efforts. When he come back to the firehouse, you'd ask him, I go, hey, Coupe de Ville, what's going on, man? Oh, we had a tough one there, Chief. You know, and he'd tell me, and well, what did you do? And he'd go through the process, so methodical. And how'd it turn out? Well, I think the kid's gonna make it. It was a good thing. So today, Your Honor, I hope you take some of this, you know, into account, some of the things that he's done. Man, this is a good guy. He really is. You know, Jeremy's already been handed a life sentence regardless. I mean, no matter how much time, if he gets time or he gets community service or whatever he gets, he's already been handed a life sentence. He lost a patient, and he'll never be able to live that one down. That will stay with him the rest of his life, especially in this situation when there were so many things. For this to happen, all the holes lined up, and Elijah fell through. He'll live with that, and he'll think about it every day. He'll never be able to be a paramedic again. This is something he trained his entire adult life for. He trained other people to save people's lives, and this is what and who Jeremy is on the fire department. Top-notch paramedic. He'll never be able to do it again. And just the stigma that goes along with this. You know, every time Jeremy goes someplace, they're going to say, hey, isn't that guy from Aurora that was involved in that case? Or his wife's in the grocery store. Yeah, did you hear about her husband? Or the kids at school, even, you know, hey, did you hear about his dad? I mean, Jeremy's going to live with this the rest of his life. So, Your Honor, I ask you, please, show some leniency today when you make your decision. Jeremy's not a fluke. He's not a flash in the pan. This is the real deal here. And as somebody else said before, and I'd like to reiterate, if there's something wrong with me, my wife, my children, my grandchildren, Jeremy Cooper's the man I want there. Thank you, Your Honor.
Right, so Jeremy Cooper's former boss really reiterating what many of the witnesses on his behalf have said, that he's a really good guy and really good at his job. All right, we'll take a break right now. When we come back, we'll get more from the impact statements, and we'll also get the judge's sentencing eventually, so keep it here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
Tonight, on Closing Arguments, the high-stakes death penalty trial of Chad Daybell. We'll take you inside the courtroom as we unpack today's key moments. Plus, the controversial case against Karen Reed, the Massachusetts woman who claims she's being framed for the murder of her police officer boyfriend. We're breaking down everything you need to know ahead of Monday's opening statements.
Closing Arguments with Vinnie Politan, tonight at 8, 7 Central, only on Court TV.
Scan now.
Welcome back, folks. We'll get you back to more of the sentencing hearing in the death of Elijah McClain. But first, I want to bring in our guest for this hour, criminal defense attorney Franz Borghardt, for our Fridays with Franz. Franz, great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. Truly appreciate it. You know, this case has an interesting history. When it happened in 2019, an investigation was done. It was decided no charges would be brought. Then, George Floyd happened. The governor of Colorado decided to take a second look at it. Charges were brought. The cops blamed the paramedics. Paramedics blamed the cops. At the end of the day, what do you feel about, just in the first place, the charges being brought against paramedics? You don't often see that.
So
I'm always skittish to see charges brought against first responders, not police officers, Michael, but the actual people, the paramedics, the firefighters, the people who are trying to save lives, right? Because at some degree, if they mess up, if they commit malpractice, absolutely sue them for civil, suits all day long. But it gets a little tricky when you start charging them with crimes, right? Because it's there's a lot of quick decisions that have to happen. And look, this guy on all accounts up until this incident sounds like he was a good guy. Sounds like he was the kind of guy that we would want as a paramedic. So, maybe this was just the right case to do it. But in general, we don't see it often. And I don't know that we will continue to see it often.
Yeah, I'm not sure this sets a precedent, but I will say this. Folks who are watching at home who may not know the sort of facts of this case, what was alleged and what the evidence showed in court, at least in the cases involving these paramedics, was that they came upon the scene. Now, clearly the scene was in control. They were being given orders by the police, but they never bothered to check Elijah McClain before they shot him with ketamine. They also gave him too much ketamine, what amounted to an overdose for someone about 80 pounds heavier than he was. And the autopsy did show that ketamine is what caused his death. Now, with those facts, does that change the way you might look at this?
So it changes it only in so much as what we're talking about is some kind of homicide that deals with negligence, gross negligence, right? Even still, not sure this is something that we should pursue criminally. Definitely civil malpractice, Michael.
Yeah, these things are always so tough to adjudicate. And again, the tenor of the times has a lot to do with it as well. We'll get into that in a minute. Right now, Franz, I want to take folks back into court. These support statements continue now for Jeremy Cooper. So let's get back in.
Your Honor, I've had the opportunity to know Jeremy Cooper for over 20 years. I was his direct supervisor for 13 years. We worked together on Engine 2, and we've been to thousands of emergencies. So I know this man's character better than most people. Maybe not his wife, but better than most people. I've personally seen Jeremy put his life on the line to save people that he didn't even know, that he had never even met. I've witnessed him pull a child from a burning home and then give that child mouth-to-mouth and CPR tirelessly, just trying to save his life, only to learn that that child died in the hospital the next day. During the floods of 2013, Your Honor, I personally witnessed Jeremy Cooper disregard his own safety and dive into raging floodwaters to save an elderly female that was being swept away. I've watched Jeremy sit and comfort a young mother when her son was run over in the street and killed while he was trying to chase down a ball, and then have to turn around and go and pull that child's body parts from underneath of that same vehicle. I've spent several years and many sleepless nights with Jeremy Cooper in North Aurora running emergencies. On numerous occasions, Your Honor, I've witnessed this man be cursed at, spit on, bitten, and assaulted. And never once did he ever lose his cool or lose his calm demeanor. A lot of times, Your Honor, he would just look up at me and he would be like, "Hey, LT, they're just having a bad day today." But I've also had the privilege, Your Honor, of seeing the thoughtfulness and the kindness of Jeremy Cooper. When he came to me and he decided to use his own money to buy Christmas presents for an entire family who their house had burned down on Christmas Eve. He did this, Your Honor, not because he wants recognition or accolades or anything for that, but he did it because that's who he is. That's the character of this man sitting here, Your Honor. Not many people will know this. Not many people even in Aurora Fire know this, but Jeremy Cooper is one of the most decorated firefighters Aurora has. He was awarded the Distinguished Service Medal. And you don't just get that for nothing. You get that for going above and beyond the call of duty, for putting your life on the line for other people. He's also received several other awards and numerous accolades, which 9 of those are Phoenix Life Saving Awards. As I've said, Your Honor, Jeremy and I, we've been on thousands of calls together, thousands of emergencies. Never once in the entire time that we've worked together, never once as his supervisor, did I ever witness this man treat somebody with neglect or malice or indifference. He cares about people, Your Honor. He is one of the best paramedics and best people that I know. He's always treated people with respect. He doesn't care who they are, where they come from, where they live, or what race they are. To him, it's all about just taking care of that person at that time. And was mentioned here earlier, Jeremy's also one of the best paramedics that Aurora Fire has. He's trained over 3/4 of the paramedics that we have on our job. That's not a light responsibility that he took. He gladly accepted that. And he did it because he truly wants to help people, and he truly wants to pass that knowledge on and that respect on for the care of the citizens of Aurora to those coming after him. In all honesty, Your Honor, you'd be hard-pressed to find anybody in Aurora Fire that doesn't like Jeremy Cooper or who has a bad thing to say about him, because that's just the kind of man he is. Your Honor, firemen, we're not heroes. We're not the Lord God Almighty. We don't get to decide who lives and who dies. We're just simply people who are given a task, sometimes an impossible task, to try to help people on the worst day that they're having. And this is what Jeremy did that night. He was simply trying to do the best that he could with what the information that he was given and how he was trained. He just tried to do the best that he could, Your Honor. And unless you're a firefighter, unless you've been in that situation and you've been and had to deal with that, you won't understand the stress of that. I can't tell you enough what it's like to have someone else's life in your hands. What happened that night in 2019 is tragic. There's no doubt about it. But we all know now that neither Jeremy Cooper nor Aurora Fire should have ever been there in the first place. He was just doing the best that he could, Your Honor, with what he was given at that moment in time. Your Honor, I truly believe that to unduly sentence Jeremy Cooper, to deny his children of their father, his wife, of her husband, and his family of their son, it would just compound this tragedy. Jeremy Cooper is an honorable man, Your Honor, and he is a great person. I would ask, Your Honor, that you give him probation only. I appreciate your time and the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, clearly the judge has a lot to think about. Now, we do need to take a break right now. When we come back, we'll get you back to more support statements for paramedic Jeremy Cooper in his sentencing hearing. Also, he speaks to the judge as well. We'll bring that to you as well, so keep it here on your front row seat to justice.
This is an important message for people on Medicare. If you're new to Medicare, moving or losing coverage, call now for your free Medicare benefits checkup and see if you're eligible to enroll in a Medicare Advantage plan that could help save money and include additional benefits.
Marianne, so nice to see you. I actually turned 65 since the last time I was here, and I'm on Medicare now. Oh, here's my card.
Okay. So it looks like you have original Medicare, Part A, which covers hospital stays, and Part B, which is medical coverage for things like physician's visits. But it looks like you don't have Medicare Part C, commonly called Medicare Advantage. Medicare Advantage plans may include additional benefits and could be better for your healthcare needs.
Confused about your Medicare options? Call 800-618-4103 now for your free Medicare benefits checkup and see if you're eligible to enroll in a Medicare Advantage plan that could save money and include additional benefits. The call is absolutely free. Call 800-618-4103. 800-618-4103.
I'm Kelly Craft in Boise, Idaho, covering the Doomsday Prophet murder trial. You're watching Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Michael Ayala. The sentencing hearing for the second paramedic convicted in the death of Elijah McClain continues. Jeremy Cooper was convicted of negligent homicide for injecting McClain with the powerful sedative ketamine. Now, the sentencing hearing is continuing. Another supporter of Cooper is now speaking. They've all had very good things to say about this man. Let's get back into court.
Your Honor, my name is Gretchen Bruno. Gretchen is Gretchen. Last name is Bruno, Bruno. I'm a physician and a family friend. I'm honestly feeling very unprepared after all of these beautifully eloquent speeches that have been made today, but I am here to speak from the heart and share with you what I've come to know about this incredible man, Jeremy Cooper, over the years. I myself am coming off of a very busy 24-hour shift, but I know that my presence and my love for this man and his family is more important than any rest I could ever have. My relationship to Jeremy is a little bit different than many who've spoken today. I met Jeremy through his now wife, Tara, and I recall a conversation I had with Tara in 2014 after they had started dating, where she shared with me what an incredible man she had met and her wishes for their future. And it worked out. Several years later, I was absolutely honored to be chosen as their doctor to care for them during Tara's pregnancy. I do recall that Jeremy came to really every single appointment Tara ever had. I watched him become a father, and it was one of the most beautiful transitions I've ever witnessed. I delivered my own son shortly after they had their first, Collins. And as all families with young children do, a couple years later, we scheduled a trip to the fire station. And I have to tell you, watching Jeremy interact with my baby boy was nothing short of magical. My son's obsession with Jeremy was immediate, and it has lasted to this day, many, many years later. And as an older mother who was and is incredibly protective of my own child, I knew then that Jeremy was honestly one of the only men I would ever trust with the care of my son. And honestly, at the time, I even trusted him more than my own husband, and I love my husband. But he is incredible, and he's compassionate and kind and honest and amazing. I was gifted with the opportunity to deliver all three of their children, and we have since become great family friends. We do outings together. We've gone to the Polar Express and the Georgetown Railroad and Breakfast with Santa many years in a row. And watching this man, Jeremy Cooper, care for his children is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. As a physician, this case obviously gives me great pause. It makes me afraid every day to do my own job and terrified to go to work and take care of other people. And I continue to do it because I love what I do, and I know that Jeremy loved what he did, and he was incredibly good at it. We've heard that from everyone here today. I know, because I'm one of them, that people who dedicate their lives to serving others go into these fields to take care of everyone, not just some people. And the first responders have a job unlike any other. And I know this now because just last year, actually just a year ago, I witnessed an incredible tragedy in my own neighborhood, just outside my back door, where a man had a heart attack in a car, and he ran into another parked car, almost hit a pedestrian, and was passed out over the wheel of his own car. My husband broke the window, took this man out of the car, and then called me to come and do compressions. And I'm a physician, I know how to do this, but I have to tell you, I knew nothing at the time. Like, I was absolutely terrified beyond anything I'd ever experienced, despite my 20 plus years in the hospital. So these people who come and respond to our emergencies as members of this society are special, more than anything I've ever known. And this entire situation is a tragedy. Lives have been changed forever. The level of grief is unimaginable, and I know, as a practitioner who's also lost people in my line of work, that Jeremy will never, ever forget this day or the experience he's had. At the end of the day, Jeremy Cooper is a gem. He's a kind, intelligent, and I'm going to cry if I look at you, upstanding member of society, and his family absolutely needs him. I also ask, Your Honor, that you take all of us into consideration in our words today in your sentencing of Jeremy Cooper. And I thank you so much for your time.
All right, we're going to take this opportunity to hit that pause button again. You will not miss a thing. We'll have more support statements for Jeremy Cooper right after the break. But first, this quick programming note. Coming up this weekend, a new special on Court TV that explores the evidence against Delphi murder suspect Richard Allen. We talk exclusively with his former lead defense attorney and best friends of the victims. We'll watch the Delphi murders, the case against Richard Allen. That's on Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern, right here on Court TV. We'll be right back.
My two best friends were just murdered.
An all-new Court TV special.
We have found 2 bodies, double homicide investigation.
The arrest of Richard M. Allen of Delphi.
Child murder!
Everyone's first reaction was, who?
No criminal history.
They got the wrong guy.
Hiding in plain sight.
He's either the unluckiest guy in the world or he was there.
The Delphi murders, the case against Richard Allen, premieres Sunday, 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
All right, folks, before we go back to court, let's bring back in our guest for this hour, criminal defense attorney Franz Borghardt. All right, Franz, let's talk about the possible sentence here. What this defendant is facing is probation, anywhere from probation to 3 years in prison on this negligent homicide charge. The other paramedic received 18 months on that charge. He's actually going to end up serving 5 years because he was also convicted of second-degree assault for administering an injection without the consent of that individual. So, but this guy was not convicted of that. So does the judge, as I said earlier, has a difficult decision to make? I'm willing to buy, at this point, from what I'm hearing, this is a great guy. This is a guy that's even saved lives before. So as I said earlier, this judge has a difficult decision to make.
So he has a lot of options, right? If you're looking strictly at parity, Michael, which is equal treatment, does he give him the 18 months? You know, because he doesn't give him the 5 years because he wasn't charged and convicted of that crime? Or does he say, you know what is the end goal of justice? This guy is now a convicted felon. We can put him on probation. The odds of recidivism of this guy, of committing another crime, are probably very low. The odds of him doing this to another human being are very low. He's not a paramedic anymore. So, you know, he does have a wide range of options. He could home incarcerate him. He could say, you know what, I'm giving you 18 months, but we're going to put an ankle monitoring device on you, and you have to stay home, and you can go to work, you can go to church, you can go, you know, to the bare necessities. There's a lot of options here. Everything we've heard thus far from mitigation witnesses, from support witnesses, seem to indicate this guy might be a great candidate for probation. What is the end of justice? Or what's the ends of justice by putting him in jail? The question is it going to deter other paramedics, other first responders from doing it? Or is he just that guy that you put it on probation and you keep an eye on him for several years?
I got to tell you, Franz, you forgot the one aspect that I think is really important in this case. There's someone who's dead. There are victims in that courtroom. The judge has to take into account that, and I want to read the definition of criminally negligent homicide, right? Essentially, it means that there was a failure to perceive through a gross deviation from standard of care a substantial risk that death would result. So this, even though the punishment doesn't seem that steep, and again, it's not my life, so 3 years in prison is difficult for anybody. But at the end of the day, this was criminally negligent homicide, and a young man is dead. That probably shouldn't be.
Well, so the issue is this, and it's always the issue when we talk about gross negligent crimes, Michael, and this is not the first time we've addressed this, is specific intent crimes are easy. Wanted to kill somebody, thought about killing somebody, and did it. Gross negligence is preventable accident that should never have happened, right? And there's just a different criminal liability standard for that and a different punishment, even with a dead individual, a dead victim in the courtroom, which is why I always come back to these are excellent civil lawsuits, not always fantastic criminal cases in terms of sending them to jail for a long period of time.
All right, Franz, stand by, because I do want to take folks back to court right now. Let's get back into that courtroom for more support statements for defendant Jeremy Cooper.
My name is Eric Hill, E-R-I-C-H-I-L-L. Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Dr. Eric Hill, and I'm the medical director for the Aurora EBS system. I'm here to speak to you today as you decide your decision on sentencing for Jeremy Cooper. The events of August 24th, 2019 had an absolutely terrible outcome, and the loss of Elijah McClain has been felt not just by his family and his friends, but by me and everyone in Aurora Fire Rescue, including Jeremy. I remember vividly being called about this case the following day, the morning of August 25th, and the numerous meetings that were had about this case over the following years. I want to speak to you about the very first meeting that I had with Jeremy and his crew to review this call. It had been several weeks since the call had occurred because I could not perform a review of the call during the investigation, which left Jeremy and his crew waiting weeks to be able to discuss the call with me. The sentiment expressed by Jeremy in that review was that of being sick to his stomach, sick over how the call happened and what happened. The loss of a patient stays with you as a healthcare professional. All of them in that room showed nothing but concern for Elijah, confusion as to why his heart had stopped in the ambulance. Jeremy showed what every medical professional should: empathy and concern for their patient, a desire to understand what had happened so they can learn and apply those lessons to help future patients. In healthcare, sometimes patients can be harmed despite our best intentions. Our obligation is to always, to our patients and to the public, is to learn from these instances, improve, and take steps to try to reduce risk going forward. I discussed the system issues before, so I just wanted to briefly remind Your Honor of a couple key points. In 2018, the EMS providers were given training on ketamine, which included alternative dosing strategies which were not approved by me and were not consistent with the protocols at the time. In 2019, there was no policy or guidance to define how or when EMS took control of a patient being restrained by police. In 2019, Excited Delirium was still extensively trained to both police and EMS professionals across this country with the goal of trying to prevent patient deaths. 4 years later, all of this has been resolved and no longer true. There is one thing that nearly everyone in reviewing this case had in common. We all knew the outcome before we reviewed the case. And that fact made all of us prone to hindsight bias. We reviewed the case knowing the outcome, which focuses our attention to many subtle things which are often not appreciated in real time. Every physician who gave their opinions on this case spent hours watching the videos, and despite all of that, the numerous physicians had very different opinions as to what was actually occurring. I said nearly everyone had that in common because Jeremy and his crew did not know that final outcome, and they had mere minutes to figure out a very complex medical condition that was ongoing. Paramedics are trained to look for patterns in patient presentations because they often don't have the full picture. It helps them determine a treatment course. And within the first minute of walking up on that call, the presentation was for someone who could have excited delirium, which he'd been trained was life-threatening if he does not rapidly intervene. Unfortunately, many of the things in the subsequent minutes afterwards he was seeing and hearing supported that conclusion, and very little did not. Had Jeremy walked up 5 minutes sooner to hear Elijah speaking coherently, none of us would be here today. I recall the prosecution asserting the paramedics' decision to use ketamine was to get rid of a problem that night, but nothing could be further from the truth. After handing off patient care to the hospital team, Jeremy and his crew waited outside of the treatment room in the ED that night until Mr. McClain had his pulse restored and was stabilizing, and took time to speak to the physician about what was going on with Elijah. Those are not the actions of someone who wanted to get rid of a problem. Over the last 3 to 4 years since this case, I've had the chance to get to know Jeremy. His character has been spoken to by many others today, but I want to share something that has been said to me several times now by him. He's expressed a desire several times to teach the lessons learned from this night, to share his story with others and first responders and EMS everywhere. And that's despite all this going around him, he's thinking of others and he just wants to help. I hope Your Honor can appreciate that Jeremy Cooper was acting with good intentions that night to try to render care in a very difficult environment. His actions were guided by what he believed was the appropriate care for him and nothing else, and that you will show leniency in your sentencing with him. Thank you.
Thank you.